Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here. First, I want to start off by saying I'm not here representing any police department. I'm here representing the people in the drug programs who desperately want a clean, safe environment to get clean in. It's very difficult. I'm here representing the mentally ill who have been thrown away by our society, left to their own vices, and the only solution for them is to sprinkle pills on them in the name of civil liberties and let them wander the streets where they're often vulnerable to becoming victims and, unfortunately, suspects. I'm also here for the diligent service providers who are the real heroes of Skid Row. I'm not a hero, you know. I get paid every 2 weeks and I get to go home. But the real heroes are the service providers who dedicate themselves to trying to help people get their lives back, but they can't because the drug dealer is sitting outside as well as inside of the program. I'm here to tell you about the real Skid Row. You're not going to read about anything that I tell you. Please pretend there's a sign over my head that said there's always exceptions to the rules, because there are exceptions to the rule. But as long as the rule exists, I have to tell you the truth so that hopefully there will be solutions that actually work in the future. All right? So I want to talk about first what Skid Row is, what it really is. Skid Row is a recovery zone. It's called a recovery zone because in Skid Row there are 107 programs designed to help people with a variety of issues: drug addiction, mental health, shelter, housing issues. And because it's located in Skid Row, it attracts two groups of individuals, right? The first group are individuals in desperate need of shelter, drug programs, or housing, or to be close to services because they can't afford it anywhere else. If we think of our favorite celebrity, I won't mention any names, where do they go to get clean? Betty Ford, Malibu, Passages, they're doing yoga, there's horses running around, and it's great. It's fantastic. All to get them away from the temptation to fail. And then they have sustained sobriety and they fall off and they just come right back. In Skid Row, they can't afford this. So these individuals have to get clean and sober, or try to, in the middle of a drug bazaar. And that is tough. Skid Row also attracts the latter, the criminal element. We have hundreds of gang members, pimps, loan sharks who come from all over LA County to prey on the people of Skid Row, to prey on their vices. Often you will have the drug dealer outside of the program and inside of the program. You'll have drug dealers who will give the homeless tents and say, "You're on my block. By the way, you owe me $100. You're going to work it off today." And it happens right in front of a mission where women and children walk by. This is what the service providers and the people of Skid Row have to go through. In my mind, working Skid Row for 17 years, Skid Row was created by two ideologies. You have one on this side that believes in NIMBYism, or Skid Row as I know it now was created by two ideologies. NIMBYism, not in my backyard. Other places in the county and even other states are saying, we don't want to deal with the homeless. Let's put them on a bus and give them a one-way ticket to Skid Row because Skid Row has quote-unquote services there and we don't have to deal with them. And then we'll come down once a month and throw food and clothes at them and make ourselves feel all warm and fuzzy. That's one group. Then you have the other group who truly believes that because someone is homeless or poor, that everybody should just be hands off and let them do what they want to do because that's all they have. This ideology on this side created this concentration camp without walls. The other side put those people in danger. There has to be order. There must be order for people to benefit from the programs and actually be safe. That makes sense. That's not political. That's not left or right. That's just the truth. All right? So let's talk about the three groups that make up Skid Row, or make up the circumstance that is Skid Row today. The one that's most important to me, because I raised a niece from birth who struggled with mental illness. And she was blessed because she had us. She has support. Now her sister takes care of her. She has conservator. She's covered. The majority of people struggling with mental illness in Skid Row have nothing. And as I stated before, our failure is sprinkle pills on them, let it go out to Skid Row, and they have their freedom and they have their pills. They're okay, right? It's not true. Because when a severely ill, mentally ill person comes down to Skid Row and runs out of their medication, I mean, if you have a heart problem and you run out of your medications, you have the sense enough to go get a refill, right? These individuals don't have that. They're sick. They're in crisis. So when they run out of their pills, who's there to medicate them? The Crips and the Bloods, which exacerbates their conditions. If you really sit down and talk to any police officer dealing with this type of situation with mental illness, they will tell you that being mentally ill is not a crime. We are not criminalizing anyone because they're mentally ill. But when that mentally ill, that bipolar person, or that paranoid schizophrenic, or that manic depressant comes in contact with methamphetamines, crack cocaine, or spice, which is really off the hook. Please don't let your kids try spice, it's horrible. You see what it's doing in just regular teenagers. Think of what it's doing to somebody struggling with mental illness. That is when they become a police problem, when they start attacking people who they think is a giant 6-foot alligator, or breakdancing in front of city buses, and we have to pull them out of the street, and we end up in uses of force. And I talked to a gentleman who was a highly trained mental health clinician. Great man, and I respect his profession. God bless him. And I said, sir, if you ran into somebody who you recognize had a mental illness, but also recognized was severely under the influence and exhibiting all the things that I described to you just now, I said, what would you do, sir? I'd call the police. Because what's the narrative now, right? That we just show up and just start cracking mentally ill people upside the head because we don't know what we're doing. It's not for a lack of training or a lack of compassion. But if a trained mental health clinician can't talk them down, what do you think we're going to do? It's wrong for us to be the solution. That's all I'm trying to say to you. I agree with you. A pair of handcuffs shouldn't be the solution to dealing with mental illness. But our society has created that. And any law enforcement officer will tell you that. What happens to the mentally ill when they get downtown is they often become victims of the most heinous crimes. They make the perfect victim for many in the criminal element, which is extremely high in Skid Row. They make the perfect victim because when that mentally ill person gets raped or brutalized, their attacker knows that they cannot articulate what happened to them, thus making them not such a sexy case to be filed or won because the person thinks he's Santa Claus when he was assaulted. So that's one challenge, and that's through no fault of their own. But it also causes them to be suspects in crime. And I've seen mentally ill people do some of the most heinous acts of crime. And once again, I, a law enforcement officer, is telling you that is not their fault. But I have to reach them when they're in a crisis. It forces all of us, the fire department, police agencies, mental health agencies, to become after-the-fact entities, and that has to change, or it's never going to change, no matter what you do. All right? Let's talk about the criminal element. As I alluded to, we have hundreds of gang members, drug dealers who come from all across the county to prey on the people of Skid Row. And they use Skid Row, the poor quality of life, the encampments, the tents, and they look at that and go, there's disorder here. I can use that tent to hide my guns. I can use that tent to hide my drugs. This guy in this encampment over here owes me $200, so he's got to put in work for me right now. Every block of Skid Row is controlled by some gang from South LA. And once you try to set up a tent on a block, they're going to step to you and say, you're on my block. Guess what you have to do? You have to put in work. And this is not vilifying the people who live in the tents. But the reality is, yes, they will engage in crime to support their habit, keep the gangsters off their back. Yes, they will. And it drives, you cannot separate poor quality of life from even violent crime or death in Skid Row. I had a picture slideshow, but I would have been here too long. That would have really convinced you of what I'm talking about. You see a woman with her head split open, and that'll make you think and give you pause. You see an elderly man beaten from head to toe. That'll give you pause. They're not telling you this in the media. They're not telling you this. I'm seeing it every day. We need to help these people. We need to help these people. All right? And then the last challenge that I think needed to change eons ago was the centralization of services in Skid Row. I alluded to that when I first began to speak. Skid Row has become the mecca for all things homeless in LA County. And as a result, of course, people send their problems to us. The programs in Skid Row are wonderful. I know the directors. I've seen people who I arrested, and I personally said when I arrested them, that person doesn't have a chance in hell. That person's probably going to die. It wasn't mean-spirited. It was just based on their trajectory of where they were going. That's what's going to happen to them. And then I go into the shelter 6 years later and see this person running the program. They can work, But those same individuals tell me, Joseph, our job is hard because, once again, the drug dealer is inside our building. The loan shark is outside of our building. It's a challenge. So I don't like just putting out problems. I have my solution. I know I'm just a cop. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, right? I think we all can agree. But based on what I've seen in 17 years, there are some things we can do for at least the mentally ill or the centralization of services. Let's talk about that first. I believe one solution in ending Skid Row as we know it is to decentralize it. And when I say decentralize, I don't want to see not one program in Skid Row shut down or closed because it's needed. I just don't want to see another one opened up in Skid Row. We have 88 cities in LA County. And because of NIMBYism, not one, with the exception of Santa Monica and Long Beach, wants to open up and put a shelter, low-income supportive housing in their area to take the pressure off Skid Row. So the people who really want to change in Skid Row can go there and have a better environment. And also, Skid Row will be less congested, and the people who choose to remain because they have a choice would also have a better, safer environment to change. That's common sense. But people would choose being comfortable over common sense. And I know the fear for many of these cities to take on this challenge is, well, if I do this, there's going to be an increase in crime. Well, there's a common sense way that I think that we can do to mitigate that as well. I believe in the house first thing, I do, but I also believe in responsible forms of it in certain areas. And in Skid Row, I personally don't believe it will work. I don't believe that in Skid Row, you can pull somebody off of Skid Row with a needle in his arm and put them in housing and think everything's going to be okay. Because that person more than likely has a drug debt or whatever, and the dope man's going to find out about it, knock on his door and say, hey, I heard you live here now. Guess what? I need you to help me turn this place out. And they will. That's what's happening in Skid Row as we speak. Okay? But decentralized, but there's a way. Go to the missions. And I know the missions seem to be an anathema to a lot of people when I talk to them. I don't understand why. They actually do help people. And find people who are actually benefited from the program, who have been clean and sober for 6 or 7 months, and house them first. That way the mission can backfill, put them inside, and fix those people and continue the cycle. To me, that sounds like a more responsible way than let's just grab somebody off the street and house them who still have issues. That's one of my solutions. And then lastly, and I'll stop, I think I've overstepped my bounds, as it relates to the mentally ill, we can no longer continue in what we're doing right now. We cannot say we care about women, but allow the conditions for a mentally ill woman to be raped in a tent in Skid Row. Rapes are up 91%, and many of those victims struggle with severe mental illness. Like I said, they make the perfect victim. How do we fix it? We need our government, and this is my opinion, as a man, not a cop, our government, police agencies, and civil liberties groups to come to the table, and let's revisit this 72-hour whole thing. Because it's inhumane to allow people in the street to walk around, right, and be victims of crime. We all can agree with that. Raise your hand if you agree with that, right? But it's also inhumane to believe that we're going to fix somebody who's mentally ill, who's also dual diagnosis, in 72 hours or less. I say lengthen that, and let's lengthen it for these two purposes. A, detox them so you can reach them, right? Common sense. Then deal with the mental illness part, and while you're doing that, connect them to services or family members who can take conservatorship over them and take them home. That's common sense. That's not liberal. That's not conservative. That's common sense. And that's my piece. Thank you so much.